systemic racism because they're scoring lower. It's like, well, damn, no more easy life. And then when we heard that both his dad and grandfather went to Stanford, we were like, ah, makes sense. California bans legacy admissions. Let's talk the good, the bad, and that gray area in the middle. California has become the second state to ban preferential treatment for legacy and donor admissions at public and private universities. The new law will affect schools such as Stanford and the University of Southern California starting next fall. Officials cite 2023 Supreme Court decision striking down affirmative action as a root cause for the move. Now keep in mind, the public institutions have already banned legacy admissions in the past. This is relevant because it's also private schools as well. Earlier this year, Maryland passed its own ban on legacy admissions at both public and private institutions. Colorado, Illinois, and Virginia have also struck down legacy admissions, but only at public universities. Obviously a very polarizing move, and I'm curious what you guys think, so let me know with a comment down below. My initial thoughts, my initial reaction is that this is a big move in the right direction. I don't think that, one question is how is it going to be enforced? Because from my understanding, it's actually not penalized. Schools that are in violation of this just get added to some list. Now, the hope is that others will then pursue them legally for being on this list and for having acted in violation of this new law, but we'll see what actually pans out.
In California, it is now the 5th state to ban legacy admissions. So this means universities can no longer give preferential consideration to students whose family attended or donated money to the school. The ban applies to California's public and private colleges.
Nice. I like how they show Lori Loughlin. She's from the whole USC scandal, paying for her children to get admissions to USC.
Today, Governor Newsom signed a bill that would ban legacy admissions at private universities in California that benefit from state funding.
The governor said admission into university should be based on merit, skill, and hard work. KCRA3's Sarah McGrew talked to students.
I agree with that. And I have my own stories to share with you in just a sec.
If you're meant to get in, I feel like you should get in and not on just the fact that your parents got in. Coming from like an immigrant household and things like that, and just like it's always like kind of things that you have to fight against and things like that.
No one else in her family has ever attended Stanford, and she doesn't believe family connection should give anyone the upper hand.
It would be better if you were getting in off your own merit.
Stanford alum and legacy student Sophie Calcott agrees.
It was something kind of shameful because even though, most legacy students, pretty much every legacy student who gets into a school like Stanford is academically qualified to be there.
Highly questionable statement right there. How do you define academically qualified? So my graduating class of high school, there was only one student that got into Stanford on academics, not on sports, scholarship, and such. And he was a good student, but not a top student. I was certainly a more qualified student, but more importantly, the top 2 students in our class, who both went to Harvard, they also didn't get accepted. And we were all very surprised by those 2 top guys not getting admissions to Stanford. And there were various theories as, they took too many people from our school the prior year and they were trying to, don't know the actual reasons, but everyone was surprised by that. And then when we heard that both his dad and grandfather went to Stanford, we were like, makes sense. And at Harvard, I knew a few people. And I remember talking to one of them saying, wow, dude, at Harvard, you're probably surrounded by these brainiacs. Here at UCLA, which is also a great public university, I feel like it's kind of high school all over again, where you have a wide range of academic seriousness and interest and things like that. And he's like, oh no, it's the same thing here, because you have to remember a lot of kids got in from legacy and things like that.
That's why as a student, she worked with the nonprofit Class Action and advocated for a ban on legacy admissions.
But certainly I could feel the gasps in the room from the lawmakers when I was the first person in line to say, I'm a legacy student and I support AB 1780.
So I knew a girl who went to Harvard, and she constantly had this imposter syndrome and had a lot of anxiety and this need to prove to people that she was intelligent because she went to Harvard, but her dad also went to Harvard. And she was a good student, but maybe she wouldn't have gotten in there if it wasn't for her father. So, when this legacy student is mentioning that everyone who gets there is academically qualified, it's like, well, how do you define academically qualified? Because there are people who are academically superior and more qualified not getting in, right? So in that case, actually, no, they're not academically qualified because they essentially are getting a leg up, getting a boost in their overall competitiveness and likelihood of being accepted because of legacy.
News for the Nepo babies, it is just not their year. No longer will
Nepo babies!
Or a ton of money get you into an exclusive California college.
Damn, no more easy life. Except it still is a much easier life, just one notch lower.
Now you'll have to get into USC just like everybody else by becoming a really, really good rower. Go Bruins.
Go Bruins!
Governor signed a law banning legacy admissions and donor admissions at all private universities in the state. That includes USC and Stanford. Schools, the LA Times say, admit many students who are children of alumni or donors. Governor Newsom says it'll promote more equal education opportunities. In a statement, says, quote, everyone should be able to get ahead through merit, skill, and hard work. The law takes effect in September of next year. Legacy and donor admission rates will be compared to other admissions. Schools will have to file a report showing they are following the law. It's not clear what the punishment would be for breaking it. USC told the Times it will comply with this law and that students already must meet high academic standards in order to get in.
High academic standards is such a vague term, dude. High academic standards is saying the top 25% of students are academically qualified, but we only accept the top 2% of students. So even though we're grabbing someone at the 18th percentile, or rather the 82nd percentile, but you know what I mean, someone from the top 18%, and we're rejecting someone from the top 5%, this top 18% person is still academically qualified. It's a load of bullshit.
What would the campus look like without the facilities that were made possible by the billions in donations?
Ooh.
This is true. And the
Much different.
buildings
It would be a different place for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, but obviously, USC had a huge, I was sort of flippant at the beginning, but a huge scandal there with people who were trying to, I guess, rig the system in order to get their kids in. And you saw, obviously, that didn't work. Different situation if you've got $50 million and you're saying, hey, build this building.
Yeah.
Also, I got a kid who maybe should or shouldn't get in. I don't know any, I would like to hear some more, and it's a private university, you don't really hear about this a lot. Somebody who donated a ton of money and their kid didn't get it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I would love to know about those kind of scenarios.
I agree. I would love to know more about that, but no one wants to talk about it because it's a little bit embarrassing, right?
There's got to be some kids that are bad enough that are like, man, it doesn't matter.
It'd be hard to find, though.
How many marble ensconced Jimmy Johns we have here. Doesn't matter. They're still not good enough.
I like this guy. He's a cool reporter. All right, on to Reddit. Top comment is that they can ban it, but it will 100% still happen. This is a concern that I have as well. Yeah, there is no penalty, but as you're going to see here, there might still be some ramifications.
Last year, the U.S. Supreme Court passed a ruling that banned all but military colleges from using affirmative action as a factor in college admissions. If it's signed by Governor Gavin Newsom, California would join at least 4 other states that also made legacy preferences at admissions illegal for either public or private institutions. The bill, if signed, would take effect next year. After September 1st, 2025, schools won't be able to use an applicant's legacy or donor connections as a factor in admissions. As it stands, the bill's only punishment for colleges would be to appear on a list compiled by the state's Department of Justice. However, Jessie Ryan, president of the Campaign for College Opportunity, which supported the bill, said her organization is part of a coalition of groups that includes legal defense funds which, quote, stand ready to take legal action if in fact campuses do not comply with the law.
The older I get, the more I realize this. And some of you may call this naiveness. I always thought that, rich people, they have it easier. Legacy admissions, these big donors, of course it's easier, no doubt. But truth is we like to pretend that it's a very concrete, widely agreeable, completely falsifiable distinction, and it's not. For many things, there's a range, and I think that you should choose the truth that actually serves you. I've had a very challenging upbringing. We don't have to go into all the details there, but more recently in young adulthood, I still had financial struggles. I still had an autoimmune condition that hospitalized me, and it's a lifelong condition, inflammatory bowel disease, and whatever other issues. But I always chose to view that because, again, truth is on the spectrum. It's not a single point. You can't just tell me that's bad that happened to you. What I would say is, well, actually it gave me more meaning. It brought me closer to my family. It lit a fire under my butt because I felt like I needed to prove something, to overcompensate so that I had to do more than the normal people that were healthy and such. So I could derive value from that. And I think there is utility in doing so. And I would actually argue and try to convince myself that there is significant advantages to actually coming from a challenging background because, and not as much privilege, and being a minority in America, which, by the way, is not just Black or Hispanic, but for whatever reason, we like to ignore that other minorities also face issues. And I would argue that, hey, I see other friends that come from a lot of privilege that struggle with like their work ethic or their hustle or their grind or their life meaning because everything's just kind of easy for them. And that is valid, but it's obviously not the entire picture. And what I'm trying to get at here is, okay, that kind of way of viewing the world is obviously a way to leverage your experiences in a way that benefits you. And I think that I did that in a way I'm quite proud of. And I don't think is an easy thing to do, to take a lot of negativity and sublimate that into positive outcomes and positive drive and things like that. But the other thing I thought when I was younger is that this
amorphous, elusive, rich people group.
Richie Rich from the movie, right? It's a very, very, very small minority of people. And sure, they have some big advantage, but it's almost irrelevant because they're such a small minority of people. And then as you get older, you realize, oh wait, that's not the case. And what's been happening the last few years is understanding how widespread privilege, medium privilege, no privilege truly is. And let me start by saying that just by being born in the US, I'm already at a huge leg up. I'm so glad I wasn't born on the other side of the world. My life would look completely different, and I'm so grateful for that. But what I'm talking about here are those in the US. And it's not just the 0.0001% that are taking advantage of things like this, legacy admissions and such. It is the upper middle class and up. Now, I'm not saying it's bad to be upper middle class. I'm not saying it's bad to be wealthy. I'm not saying it's bad to build a business and accumulate wealth and resources, etc. Absolutely not. But what I am saying is it is so much easier for those people when you allow things like this to happen, like legacy and donor-based admissions. And I talk about this way more unfiltered on my Jabal and Cars YouTube channel, which is mostly about cars, but sometimes I do these rambly kind of life advice stuff. And what you realize is how widespread it is. And as an example, I'm now 33, and a lot of my friends from high school and from college, a lot of them have bought homes in California. And I remember feeling kind of behind in my late 20s to early 30s. Granted, I went to medicine, you get a later start to life. Not to life, but to your earning career, I should say. And I felt behind, but I started a business. I worked really, really hard, even after residency, putting in 100+ hours a week for months and months at a time. And there was a point in time where I was like, hey, I'm doing actually pretty well. I'm grinding, I'm working up. And then I would still see friends who were also in medicine, as an example, that had a home in med school and then were able to buy a home in California. And it's like this $2.5 million home. You're like, God damn. And then you talk to them, and I'm so grateful that my friends, they're open and honest, right? And oh, okay, got it. So your parents paid for your college and your med school, and they bought you your first home while you were in med school, and then you guys sold it, they rolled that over and helped you with your down payment at your new home. That's obviously completely different levels of privilege, right? And that's a completely different leg up as well. Those who have the disposable income and the resources to do so will always have certain advantages because they will use their disposable income to purchase tutoring and admissions services for their student to get into college or to medical school. And yeah, my business, Med School Insiders, we do provide those services. We help with admissions consulting, but I'll also say that we try to give back to the community. And we have this annual scholarship where we give $5,000 free services to those who can demonstrate financial need and prioritize wellness and balance. But ultimately, it still needs to be you and your hard work that ultimately gets you the decision of an acceptance. So if you want to get high scores, yeah, you need to study hard, you need to work hard, you need to earn that yourself, and not just rely on legacy or money to make your whole life easier. So for those who are against this policy, I'm legitimately curious to hear the counter position. I'm never one person to just go all in on one side and put my stake in the ground and never change my mind. I'm all about changing your mind. As you get more information, as you hear other viewpoints, if you don't change your mind or update your viewpoints or consider other alternatives, then you're not a serious thinker. You're just an ideologue that aligns with whatever's convenient or whatever identity you take on. My main concern is the enforcement or the lack thereof with this new ruling and what that's actually going to mean in the future. Is anything going to really change? And I always find it so funny when random people will come to the channel, watch some videos, and they'll think I'm either left or right and make it a political thing. And the thing is, I'm pretty apolitical in the sense that I look at each individual issue and make a decision on that rather than adopting the entire left's agenda or the entire right's agenda. And if you ask yourself, if you agree with the entire left or entire right, and you don't disagree with any single item, but you completely align, are you actually a serious thinker? Is it actually likely that you arrived at the same decisions? I mean, sure, you're gonna have similar values and a lot of overlap, but the same decisions on every single policy because you critically thought about it, or because you just adopted an identity and it's the us versus them, and it's easier to just outsource your own thinking, to not be a serious thinker than to think about each individual issue in and of itself. I take that stuff very seriously, and I'm proud that you can't put me in a box. I mean, even things like affirmative action, right? It's a sticky subject. It's a very touchy thing and it's hard to discuss, but it's so hard to even talk about it factually because I think there is value to helping underrepresented minorities so that we get better patient care for other patients who are underrepresented minorities, right? Underserved populations. But at the same time, it's incredibly unfair to the overrepresented minorities, Asians, South Asians, that it's essentially harder for them to get in compared to Caucasians. So it's not an easy thing to just, and people make it black and white, like it's either good or bad, and it's so clear and so easy. And I'm here thinking this is actually very complicated. And how do you guys have such certainty? How is it so simple for you? I'm so surprised. So if on one hand I can see the benefit to affirmative action or affirmative action like policies, on the other hand, I can see the abuse. I know someone who I've talked about previously on the channel who is 30% African-American according to 23andMe, or 33%. He was like, I'm a third.
I sexually identify as an attack helicopter.
He came from an upper middle class background, went to a good public school, had a lot of resources, but I read his personal statement and it wasn't very good. But the whole essay was just about him being black. And even though when you look at him, you're like, okay, this guy's like, he doesn't look black, but his whole essay was about being black. And then surprise, surprise, he goes to a school, gets full scholarship, and you're like, okay, is that an abuse of the system or is that intentional? Because in that case, I would argue, well, it's probably better to actually help those, regardless of their skin color, from economic disadvantage. Because those are the people that actually have a true disadvantage. They don't have the same resources as those who are in these upper, more privileged tiers of society. And even this, people don't like their viewpoint being challenged. Just sticking on this affirmative action topic for a moment. Back when USMLE, there were discussions for it becoming pass-fail, they said it's a racist test. I was like, wait, the test is racist? What's going on? How's it racist? Like actually curious, not questioning it, right? But like, tell me what's going on. And they said that statistically, if you look at Black and Hispanic students, they're scoring lower on step 1. And then you say, okay, but does that mean it's racist? Yeah, clearly it's systemic racism because they're scoring lower. It's like, well, let's think about it more critically and not just go full ideologue mode and just go full identity politics and I'm pro this and anti that. Let's talk about the nuance. And the nuance is that Black and Hispanic students who apply to medical school get in with much lower MCATs and GPAs. And what is the #1 predictor of your USMLE score? Your MCAT. So if you get in with a lower MCAT, then it's not surprising that you're gonna have a lower USMLE score. Now, is that right or is that wrong? I don't know, but it's something that we should be able to discuss openly and honestly and have this nuanced discussion rather than saying black and white. I think this whole conversation about legacy and donor admissions, money admissions, is very much related to affirmative action, right? It's touching on similar concepts. But what I would push for if I was in charge would be having some affirmative action not based on race, but rather based on socioeconomic disadvantage. That is a much more reasonable and worthwhile factor to helping them, right? Let's help those who are from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds, whether they're Black, Hispanic, white, Asian, South Asian, and those who are from socioeconomically privileged backgrounds, let's not give them help. They already have a lot of advantages. And again, that way you're still helping a lot of underrepresented minorities because a lot of them disproportionately fall into that group. But that's not the way that things are done right now. It very much is heavily based on race. And with legacy and donor admissions, it's based on who your parents are and how much money they have. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know below.